Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Clientele Boosters. Today we have a recent friend that I made about 6 to 7 months ago at one of Tai Lopez's conferences in Australia. Hooman is an extremely inspiring entrepreneur who has a variety of skill sets. So, Hooman, would love you to just introduce yourself and talk a bit about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Hooman Mardox. I've worked on so many different projects and currently focused on a couple of software projects. I also have kind of a community that I help individuals build and grow mobile apps.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, mobile apps. And that's a specific niche that is more difficult. I've had friends that have have done extremely well with applications in the late teenage years, doing apps for different celebrities in the States, but it's extremely difficult initially to learn that skill of coding. So how did you get into apps? Was it something that you were interested in as a child? Was it curiosity? I'd love to hear the origin story there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in software forever since I remember. I used to write code before I went to school. So Commodore 64, I started on Commodore 64, and I love writing code. And yeah, I've been involved with tech my entire life. In terms of like turning it into a business, I've done so many different businesses, some successful, some not successful, of course. Um, and yeah, with mobile apps, I when apps basically came out and like with App Store and Google Play and stuff, I tried a few apps and some of them flopped. And then I got into doing market research. And when you do market research, you figure out like the opportunities and you see like what works and what doesn't. And if you get good at market research, you can see potential in different markets. So I started building apps for markets that I discovered potential for. And those apps blew up. I invested more and more in apps. And yeah, I grew to like a $2 million portfolio in 6 months and made a few mistakes. I lost some of those apps, sold some of them, and yeah, that's basically the story of me getting to the app market.
Wow. Okay. Um, I guess when it comes to, because you said you've always been in software, always been in tech, so to speak, at what age did you specifically start? What was that first, whether it was exposure to the app industry or was it gaming? Because usually it seems that a lot of app guys either loved being like on consoles or on computers. Was that your pathway or was it a bit different?
No, I mean, I used to play games when I was younger, but I got into coding before I even played games and stuff.
Right.
So I wrote my first line of code when I was, I think, 5.5 years old
Wow.
on Commodore 60. Yeah, I was hooked the first time I just saw it, and then yeah, I was playing games here and there, but not as much as writing code. Like writing code because it gives you the ability to control the machine. There is
Hmm.
something magical about it. Although like these days, I don't recommend people writing code. Like the landscape is changing. If you don't really enjoy it, I don't think it's a skill set that you should acquire because you can buy it for cheaper. And then we have AI nowadays as well. But yeah, I've been hooked in coding my entire life. Although I don't recommend it to people anymore. Like I don't think it's a skill set that you should learn if you want to build an app.
Gotcha. Okay. What I'm curious about is who was introducing that to you at 5 years old? Do you have a parent that was adjacent to that field?
My uncle, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, my uncle had a Commodore 64. I remember the day that he bought it. We picked it up,
Uh,
and I had no idea about computers, right? We plugged it in. I remember it like clearly, and I was hooked. Like that was the day that I was hooked. Like I remember the screen. I mean, like we didn't have monitors back then. You would just plug it into the TV,
mm,
like the old TVs, and yeah, that was it basically. And I've been hooked since.
that's an
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Have you done projects with your uncle or it's always been kind of your own?
Yeah, no, we used to do a lot of projects. Like we used to write software. We used to even build like mechanical hands and stuff. We did a bit of robotics, bit of like programming and stuff. We did everything, like hundreds of projects.
That's
Yeah.
mad. Dude, that's super
Yeah.
inspiring, man. Like because what I've found is that a lot of people glorify the kind of startup land since 2016 2015, the Silicon Valley, after that movie on Netflix came out, The Social Something. um and quite frankly, those people are also the ones that will trend hop from NFTs to AI to, emerging tech, etc. But what I found is those that are doing exceptionally well, and even a few of those domains, whether it's AI, whether it's apps, whether it's blockchain technology, which are different to what you're doing, they've been interested for like a decade already. In your situation, like I'm assuming you're in your early 30s. Yeah.
30, 38. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you've been doing
Yeah.
that for since you were 5, like 20 plus years, or 30 plus years rather. So that's cool. Makes sense. So I guess as you proceeded throughout kind of junior school and into high school, how did that obsession, for what you were doing balance out with, homework and things like that? Or did teachers kind of give you space? How did you navigate that?
Oh, good question, actually. Yeah, it's a long story, but I can give you a snippet. So I've been obsessed with like writing code in computers my entire life. So I got into this school. It was like a school back home for like exceptional talent. And in that school, I was fully focused on computers. I was like just writing code. So didn't pay much attention to my schoolwork, to my homeworks and stuff. And in that school, they basically give you high school material when you're year 6.
Right.
So like you're 3, 4 years ahead in terms of like the material that you go through, right? So I struggled through those years because I wasn't interested in school at all. We had computers in school, which was really good. So I was like really enjoying being at school for like the computers, but not for anything else. But then when I got into high school, I got into like a normal high school.
Right.
And because we already studied all of those topics and subjects like many years ago,
Yep.
so I wasn't studying again, but this time I was just acing everything. Like with math and like physics and everything, I was doing really well. And yeah, so that was like, and then like the obsession thing that you mentioned, that people are in the industry for like so long before they make something big happen. Like you gotta love it, and it's your love for problem solving.
Yep.
Like when you love solving problems, and especially what is writing code, it's basically solving problems, right? So when you absolutely love that and you can't wait to get home and solve the problem that your piece of code has, and then when you solve it, it feels so good. So if you're obsessed with that, everything in life is basically a problem, right? So you want to make money, that's a problem that you need to solve. And if you know how to solve problems, which is basically the same set of principles, then you can solve any problem, really. It's just a matter of like how long would it take you to solve it, depending on your experience and expertise. But everything in life is a problem. And I think people who learn how to code, they kind of exercise their problem-solving muscle. And I think that has a lot of value. But back to my comment earlier that like I don't recommend people learning how to write code. Like if you love it and if it's something that you really want to do it, and you're going to learn how to solve problems. But if this is something that you're not really passionate about, find something else that you're going to solve problems in, and then you're going to get good at that skill, which is, I think, it's the most powerful and important skill in life.
Hooman, I think that's excellent advice. And that's a great frame. You're right. Everything was once or is a problem. And we develop different mechanisms of solving those things, whether in your situation it's code, but also, other personal things that even me and you discussed late last year about life, and how that extrapolates. Okay. So as you were acing things and, balancing the other side of things in high school, what kind of person were you? Were you the one that was at home, just always coding, not really going out? Or were you ironically the one that was just because you're smart and you're humble, so you're not going to take that, but were you that intelligent guy that could also balance having an extreme social life? So how were you perceived by maybe your peers in high school?
Yeah, so the world that I come from, we're super social. So this whole idea of being at your desk all the time, that idea doesn't really exist back home.
Right.
So everybody's social, everybody has good social skills. There's always a balance, but you have some kids that are more into sports, and there you have some kids that are more into science and stuff. But this imbalance of people going in one direction and not having the other side well developed, that doesn't really exist back home the way that exists in Western countries. So pretty much everybody's social. Like you cannot not be social. You wouldn't function properly. So there's this always that aspect of like being social and having your network and friends and everything. But at the same time, if you're obsessed with something, you have plenty of time to spend on the time on that as well.
Interesting. So do you miss that part of being back home compared to being in Australia?
Yeah, so one thing that I've noticed is like the community is not as strong in the Western countries
Yep.
because everybody's like focused on work, of course. I've built a good community here in Bondi, and I think it's super important because without your community, you're gonna fall, right? It's just it's a human nature. And one of the projects that I'm actually working on, it's about like building a network of high value individuals, like a global network.
Mhm.
So I think that's quite important, but it's just like we can't change the rules of the society that we're in. Like the society optimizes a certain way. And if the society is optimizing in a way that the communities are less and less important for day-to-day life, then it's hard to fight against it. But I think like it's something that you definitely need. Now, I also think about this idea that like maybe AI, like AI assistant, your AI assistant is gonna fill that gap. So maybe you're gonna have 10 AI friends, or
Mm,
instead of your uncle, cousins, you're gonna have your AI cousin, right? So different personalities in your phone that you can talk to. So I think something's gonna fill the void, but I can totally see the void in Western countries for sure.
wow. Okay. Um, how have you found that this group of yours that you're building has it in your I guess in your opinion started to not solve but present an out? Because obviously a lot of particularly young men, but men in general really struggle with social anxiety and imposter syndrome and being able to walk up to whether it's women also making friends with other men. Have you found that your group kind of steps in and acts as a bridge for a large amount of men and people in general?
Yeah, so I've got a group of individuals who are focused on like building software.
Yeah,
So because that's not the topic of that group, I'm not focused on it.
sure.
With the project that I'm working on to build out like a global network, that's work in progress. So I haven't released it yet.
Okay.
I personally don't feel stress at all, like stress and anxiety and all these things. I've never felt it. So I understand it's a big problem. Maybe it's because I come from a world of like strong community or something. So
Mm,
I had that kind of lack of community built because I think people feel stressed when they feel that they're not safe, um, or like they can't see the future, or like something's wrong, or there's a void. I don't feel stress. I think that's why I can also take like massive risk. And I've taken like some major risk in life, and I think it's because I don't really feel stress or anxiety or any of those things that people are struggling with.
wow. Okay. So you've never really, there's not a moment where you can be like, at that sequence of life or stage of life, there was a sense of anxiety or stress. You've always been kind of pretty even keeled.
Yeah, I mean, the example that I can give you is like everything that I have, if I lose it tonight, I would not be worried one bit.
For you, I
Like there's
believe
this
that. I
company.
can feel that. I believe that for you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Continue.
think
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's maybe it's because of my ability to solve problems since early ages because of writing code. I've built that confidence that no matter the situation, I can solve it. And maybe I say this and the universe tries to prove me wrong somehow. It happens. But like I think like if you have that confidence that no matter how bad the situation, you can always find a solution as long as you're alive, of course,
Hmm.
then that gives you that peace of mind that no matter what, things will be fine, and then you can take big risk. And of course, when you take big risk, there's big reward. But yeah, honestly, I'm obsessed with seeing patterns, and I
Mm.
love to understand why things are the way they are. And one thing that I've noticed is a lot of people that I know, they have stress and anxiety, and they have problem with sleep, and these are things that I didn't know about like growing up. So these are like most Western country oriented things, like, or yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. So
Yeah.
You're right. The thing is, you're right, because when it comes to, for example, the sleep pattern, there's literally a circadian rhythm. That's a pattern. Like follow that pattern. And obviously there's adjustable things for that. But even with eating, there's that rule, eat between 6 to 6, eat to each their own, but you get what I mean. Okay. So when you were, because you talked a lot about risks, when did you take that first big risk when it came to the field that you're in? And I would like to kind of see where that bridged, especially into your late teens and early 20s. Oh, you there? You go.
Hey, yep.
Recording still going.
You froze?
Don't, nothing's been lost. All good.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you froze. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't get your question. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
froze.
So the question was, you talked about taking big risks. So
Mhm.
at what, I guess around that inflection point straight after high school into your late teens, early 20s, what were one of the first big risks that you took that started to define, I guess, or give you that launch pad to where you are today? And that doesn't have to even just be project wise, it can mean character traits, etc. But what was that big risk around that period?
Yeah, so one of the biggest kind of risks that I took, but I don't see it as a risk, but other people do see it as that, is I came to Australia on my own, and I went to a university which is like 8 hours away from Sydney. So from the Northern Hemisphere, like 12,000 kilometers away, came here in a world that I didn't know anybody, completely brand new world. And yeah, for a lot of people, that's a major risk. For me, it was just like, I didn't even see it as risk. It was just like, okay, I'm doing this, done. So one of the early like things that I did that for a lot of people, it might not be the easiest thing. But yeah, and then it built up on that.
So what led
Yeah.
you to come to Australia?
Yeah, so I was always thinking about like going to a country to work on tech with a good tech infrastructure, and I wanted to go to a uni to do like computer science and stuff. And I picked a few countries, and I got it accepted in Australia, and I liked the country and everything. And I was like, okay, I'll go to Australia, and I ended up coming here and staying here. Yeah.
Did you find that there was, again, you're not the type to get super stressed. So how did you find that culture change? I wouldn't even say shock, but there's a change. If you're sociable, then obviously that's highly rewarded in Australia compared to certain parts of the US or even the U. I'm not going to mention parts of Europe, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So, um, how did you find that adjustment?
Yeah, so the first 6 months was very difficult. But then me being obsessed with patterns, I saw the patterns and you replicate them, right? And then you integrate yourself. And then, yeah, for first 6 months was very difficult because it's just like culturally, there are a lot of nuances to culture and like how people operate and how we have these protocols and standards when it comes to operating in the society. And yeah, and then you get adjusted, and then yeah, it becomes second nature to you. And then yeah, but this first 6 months was quite difficult because I didn't know anybody, and yeah, but again, like patterns, right? When you see patterns, you can replicate them, and you see like you understand why they exist.
How old were you when you came to Australia?
I was 21, 20 or
Wow.
21, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. All right.
yeah.
So when you were at uni, I'm assuming was it a 4 year uni or how many years were you in university for?
Yeah, I did like 3 years, and then I did a year of PhD,
Okay. So
but then I dropped out.
and then did you say you dropped out or
I dropped out of PhD, yeah,
had a PhD?
yeah.
What was the reason for that? Was that to pursue something or
Yeah, so when I was in uni, I had this side hustle, like a business that we used to ship out like jewelry,
Hmm.
like a monthly subscription jewelry. It's an idea that I came up with. We used to order like jewelry from China. This is a long time ago, probably like 2012,
Wow.
right? 2012, 11 or 12. And then we had this box of jewelry that we designed, and then you would subscribe, and then you would get like a box every month, like a surprise box, right?
Mhm.
And one day I had a bunch of these boxes ready to be posted out in my backpack, and I went to see like kind of my supervisor, and then
Mhm.
uh, I showed him like the stuff that I was doing, and he goes like, "Okay, you have two options now. You can either do your PhD, become somebody like me, and then you're gonna mark students for the rest of your life, or up like you seem to be doing well like doing business and making money. Go build a business, and whenever you need somebody like me, you can hire somebody like me."
Mm.
And he was like, "There are your two choices." And I was like, that's actually a really good point, because when you have money, you can hire somebody who has a PhD, and they can solve the problem for you. And I was like, okay, so maybe it's a better idea for me to go and build a business or start making money, because that gives me more freedom based on that logic.
Mm.
And I appreciate him saying that, because he was really honest, and
Mm.
like he helped me a lot. Actually, he gave me a lot of advice. We actually became friends over. But he marked me like down one time over one of the assignments, and I went to his office to pick a fight, basically, because I thought that I deserved better. And
Yeah.
then after that incident, we became really good friends, and he gave me a lot of good advice. And yeah, I think that piece of advice that he gave me, he was like, you have these two options. You either can, yeah, you can finish your PhD, you can become somebody like me, and then you're gonna sit in an office like this and mark students for the rest of your life and do like a research here in there, or go build a business, and if you have resources, you can hire anybody you want. And that made me think, and I picked build like working on business and making money, and I found that to be a better option.
It's rare that a professor, and you might agree here, is that raw and real. Usually they try to sway you the other way down the line of academia. Um, are you guys still friends to this day?
We're Facebook friends, but I haven't talked to him for a bit, like for some time, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So what kind of, I guess, revenue and profit at that time was that venture? Because that sounds like, I guess, one of your first official businesses. Would that be a correct assumption, or was that one of the few?
Definitely not my first. I used to make a lot of money when I was back home. I built this business. So I found this opportunity in the market. Um, so I bought a printer, like an inkjet printer. And then I found out that like the cartridges were super expensive back home because of the exchange rate.
Mm.
So I came up with the idea that like, oh, refilling the print cartridges. And I found out that like a lot of people tried. You could buy the kits to refill them, but then uh, the probability of it working was like 50-50.
Yep.
So I came up with this idea of, what if I do this at scale and put a guarantee behind it? So you bring your cartridges to me, I refill them, and if
Mhm.
it didn't work, you get your money back, right? But because my margin was so big relative to the price of the that I was charging, then even if you brought the cartridge back, I would still be making money,
Yep.
like based on the ratio of
I
number of
understand.
times that it worked. Yeah, and then I also like bought ultrasonic cleaner.
Hey guys, it's Dami here from Clientele Boosters. Look, if you're enjoying this video so far and you want to much more of the conversation that I'm having, then just go to the free Mega Community Builders School Group. I repeat, the free Mega Community Builders School Group. The link should be in the description or in the bio, and you can watch a lot more of this interview. I'll see you guys there. Enjoy. Bye-bye.